I'm Coach K Rose with KrossBox, and I'm going to show you how I like to wrap my hands. What I'm going to use are 180-inch Mexican style hand wraps. I'm going to be using a brand called Fighting. We got all sorts of wraps. They come in all different sorts of colors and flavors. So Title Boxing makes them. It's a brand that I really like called Meister. You can get them from Bold, Everlast, and maybe someday we'll have a KrossBox branded wrap. So I'm going to use a basic 180-inch wrap. Some brands are a little bit thicker than others. I like the thinner because it allows me to make my fist a little bit tighter. There are some brands out there that don't have that elasticity that's so important. So if you get a brand that is really tight, that's going to be a problem. Eventually the wraps tend to get kind of loose on your hands. So the Mexican style has that elasticity that kind of squeezes to your body and it'll stay throughout your workout. Okay, to wrap your hands, you need to find the loop end. Some people wrap their hands while the wraps are completely rolled up and kind of roll them on. I like to do mine loose. That's just how I learned. 3 things to remember when you're wrapping your hand. As long as you have sufficient protection on your wrist, you have protection on the back of your hands, and you're covering your knuckles, then your wrap job is going to be sufficient. On the wrap job, you don't need to go any further than these knuckles, because these are the knuckles that, if you punch right, are connecting. So from just below the wrist to just above those first knuckles is about where the wrap's going to go. All right, so I found my loopy end, and usually the wraps will say something like this side down. If not, you just want to make sure that the side that you put against your body is going to end up with the Velcro sticking up top. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to loop it around my thumb. And again, everybody does this a little bit different. This is just my version. I'm going to take this side down and I'm going to wrap it towards my hand. All right. And then what I'm going to do is just start putting a couple of layers around my wrist. Okay. So I'm going to just start with about 3 layers. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down in between my index finger and my thumb. Now this is important. I'm going to take it from index finger and thumb and I'm going to wrap it around the base of my thumb, and I'm going to come back up. So I'll show you from a different angle, coming through here, going around the base of the thumb, and then you end up with it coming back in. And what that does is kind of pull that thumb bone into your body. Now I'm going to be wrapping the knuckles, and it's really important when you wrap your knuckles that you keep your fingers wide, because when you make a fist, your knuckles are going to get really wide. So if you wrapped your hands like this, when you go to make a fist, those wraps are going to be super tight, and we don't want that. So wide fingers, and I'm simply going to take the wrap and I'm going to lay it across my knuckles. All right, that's as far down as I need to go because I'm sufficiently covered. So I'm going to do about 3 layers. Now here's where it gets a little bit complicated. I'm going to take my wrap job and I'm going to go all the way down to my wrist, and I'm going to circle around my wrist, and I'm going to cross back up to the top. All right, and when I cross back up to the top, I'm actually going to thread it through these 2 knuckles. All right, now I'm going to bring it back down, and I'm going to thread it through the middle knuckle. All right, so it's really important when you're threading through your knuckles that you come from the wrist, from either side, to the knuckles, because you can't go through the knuckles from up top where the wrap's just going to fall down. So what I'm doing is I'm coming from a diagonal position. So in order to go diagonal through these knuckles, I'm going to have to change, because I want it to come from this direction. I'm going to have to change the direction of my wrap job, and I'm going to give it 1 full lap around my wrist. So now my wrap job is coming from this side, which means I can go diagonally and thread it through my pointer finger and my middle finger. So now I've sufficiently wrapped between all 4 of my knuckles. And I only like to go through my knuckles 1 time each, because if you get too much threaded between there, then it's going to be hard to make a fist and be very uncomfortable. All right, so now the wrap is between all of the fingers, and what I'm going to do is kind of secure all of the hand wrap against my body. So what I've done is I went back down to my wrist, and I'm going to circle it back up towards my pinky. I'm going to bring it around my knuckles again. And when I come back through the index finger and the thumb, I'm going to crisscross it back down to the wrist again. So depending on how wide your hands and wrists are, you may be able to continue that pattern a couple of times. So I went back down to the wrist. I'm going back up to my knuckles. When you get to about 1 to 1.5 feet left in the wrap, you want to finish the job. So I'm up top right now. So what I'm going to do is take that crisscross diagonal to the wrist, and then I'm going to finish it down here And if you did it right, that Velcro should be on the top. So you can see here, it's nice and smooth. I've got all of my fingers wrapped in between. The Velcro is down here. If your Velcro ends up somewhere up here, then that's gonna be a problem because you don't wanna scratch yourself when you're wiping up all that sweat. That's knuckle number one. Something that I've noticed and a lot of other fighters have mentioned is that the ritual of wrapping the hands before a workout or before a fight is very meditative. It gives me a few minutes to focus and sharpen my mindset for the work ahead. So let's go ahead and wrap up the other hand. Always wrap your hands before your fight routine. You need to have your hands wrapped whether you're hitting a speed bag, heavy bag, double-ended bag, focus mitts to protect your hands. But just as importantly, having your hands wrapped, it just looks cool.